of course, all good leadership starts with the relationship and talking to the people to begin with and getting to know them. And you can do that and should do that one-on-one, or you can do that in a team meeting and have people, discuss how they like to celebrate if we're successful on this objective, what they like to do to celebrate, and don't decide for them. For a lot of companies, it's difficult to give the reins to the employees. But that's what we need to do today more than ever before. We've got to be more employee-centric, instead of saying,
We
no,
understand it.
we know how to do it, and then we'll tell you what to do.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the HR Leaders Podcast. Today I'm joined by Dr. Bob Nelson, who's the world's leading authority on employee engagement and recognition. He's also a keynote speaker and best-selling author of over 30 books, which have sold 5 million copies, including 1001 Ways to Engage Employees and Work Made Fun Gets Done. During the podcast, we discussed the biggest employee recognition mistakes that companies make, the top 3 employee recognition initiatives that have zero costs, why the war for talent is already over, and why common sense is not always common practice. As always, before we jump into the video, make sure you hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and follow on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. With that being said, let's jump into the video. Welcome to the show, Bob. How are you?
Chris, I'm doing good. Yourself?
I'm sorry for waking you up so early in the morning. What time is it?
It's 6 a.m.
6 a.m. So is it still dark?
West Coast time.
Is it still dark, or are you?
It's starting to lighten up.
You got a fake background, so it looks like you're in the Amazon rainforest at the moment. So nice.
Peaceful.
Are you an early morning riser, or am I in trouble for making you get up this early?
You're not. You're never in trouble.
Firstly, how are you? How have you been? How's the family?
Very good. Excellent. Life's a journey. Always fun.
Nice. Have you managed to get out since we last spoke? And sort of I know a lot of your work was sort of physical, in person, speaking, stuff like that.
Join the crowd, right? That's most of America. You find it's coming back. Are you traveling?
Yeah,
that's probably the big one, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not traveling at the moment, but what I'm realizing is speaking to a lot of people that are back on the road or back on the speaking circuit or stuff like they're finding it quite difficult to get back in the groove of things, because we've been on Zoom calls for so long. Now we're in a room with hundreds of people or on stage. It's like we're kind of having to relearn all over again.
Yes. I think there'll be the hybrid model for positions, and so for workers and for speakers and for I think it's going to be a new reality for whatever people are doing.
Mm-hmm. For people that aren't aware of your work, give them a bit of a background, because every time we speak, I know you're constantly fascinated by different things, and every time I speak to you, I feel like you've reinvented what your passion is or the area of focus. You've written so many books. How are you constantly disrupting Bob all the time? And tell everyone after that what you're most passionate about right now. What's top of mind?
Well, I'm drawn to simple concepts that are proven yet not widely applied. So I kind of the book that kind of launched me is 1001 Ways to Reward Employees, which was around the importance of reinforcement theory, which is, again, was not new, but I in my experience, I found that it wasn't widely used. In fact, I did a graduate school class. I got my PhD working with Dr. Peter Drucker, father of modern management. And I remember I was taking a class on control systems, the professor made an offhand remark that as proven as positive reinforcement is. There hasn't been much application in the world of business. And I said, I'm going to do something about that. And I did this book before I finished my PhD, by the way, which was
Oh,
kind of,
really?
I'm not sure if that was a mistake, but people said I did it backwards, because then my life, I spent the next 12 years out talking about it.
I'm sure you learned so much from researching for the book. There's probably like in itself was an entire education of doing all of the research for the book,
Yeah, and
looking at the
it's fun,
science.
the power of a good example. And I think one of the things I did specifically, I didn't want to talk in generalities. So I have in fact, all my books, I have 100% real examples from actual companies with quotes. And so I'd be able to ask, what did you do? Why did you do it? What results did you get? And
What went well, what didn't?
yeah, and
Yeah.
then I really kind of cut to the chase, and took out all the boilerplate and just cut to the idea. Here's the idea they did, and then here's the results they got. So hey, maybe it would work for you. Give it a
Yeah.
try. And then, so someone told me I kind of redefined how putting the power in people's hands. So instead of saying, okay, this is what you need to do, 1, 2, 3, which is really difficult because people's circumstances are so different, the size of the company, location, the product. Instead, I said, here's around this proven principle, here's what is working for people. And it likely could work for you if you give it a try. So it forces them to then select from those examples
What fits and what works for them.
Yeah.
What would you say is
and if it doesn't, if they do an example that worked for someone else but didn't work for them, no harm done. Turn the page and try that one. So
well, you've got 100 more to try. So you got
yeah, and or pass the book around your immediate staff and have them select what ideas they'd like to try. So then you can turn the book into a customized handbook for your immediate team, and all of a sudden now it's even less abstract. It's and if you want to surprise someone for doing a great job, you can go see what they already have selected. Of course, all good leadership starts with the relationship and talking to the people to begin with and getting to know them. And you can do that and should do that one-on-one, or you can do that in a team meeting and have people, discuss how they like to celebrate if we're successful on this objective, what they like to do to celebrate, and don't decide for them. I find it's for a lot of companies, it's difficult to give the reins to the employees. But that's what we need to do today more than ever before. We've got to be more employee centric, instead of saying,
we understand
we know how to do it, and then we'll tell you what to do. And I think we're seeing that right now as companies have been asking people to return in person to the workplace. And fortunately, the number of companies that are asking everyone to come back full time 5 days a week is very small. It's only around 4% right now, but the majority have asked for people come back 3 days a week or some variation on that. So
yeah. What would you say is the biggest mistake that companies make when it comes to employer recognition?
We got recognition. Well, the biggest one is not asking and saying that they know. So, first conversation with the company that I've done this in all industries, that say, what are you doing around recognition? And a typical company will say, oh, we're all over it. We've got years of service awards, and we've got benefits that are a great benefits package, and we once or twice a year we get everyone together and do an all employee thing, and yeah, we're all over it, and go wow, let's say you're doing what employees want. Well, no, we're doing we think so. Well, you've asked them. Well, no, that's where we spend all our money, so it must be what they want. and well, well, let's ask them, and just it'll be easy confirmation because you said that's what they want, so let's do that. And of course, when we do, they never say that. They never say, "Oh yeah, you're hitting all the marks." They're saying, they're saying, "Oh, yeah." And what surprised me is like the number of people that say, "Gee, I just wish someone would notice me, what I'm doing here."
Hmm.
My boss never says anything, I never hear anything from upper management. In fact, the only feedback I get is when I made a mistake, and
Then you get some
then it's,
feedback.
yeah, you screwed up. We got a policy about that. We went over that in training, and so we're quick to find fault. And I guess it's human nature that we're quick to find fault and
We
slow
kind of
to
take for granted when things are
give
going
some praise.
well and people are doing the job and are going above and beyond. We just expect that, and we don't. But then when someone does something wrong, we're like, "Wait, whoa, we did that."
Unless you hear otherwise, assume everything's going fine. You're doing
Exactly.
a great job. Well, that doesn't really mean much to people to say,
Yeah.
"Hey, everyone's doing a great job. Keep it up."
Of the
People wanna hear
100,
what they're doing, what are they doing that's a great job, and do you notice, and are you even paying attention? And so it's surprising to me how elusive it has remained, because I did this book, 1,001 Ways to Reward Employees, 25 years ago, and I thought, yeah, well, people will see the light and then it won't be a thing anymore, but it's persisted, and I've been very very surprised that it
still to this
continues to
day.
be. Yeah, yeah. And so all my books are around that kind of notion of what are proven, what do we know for a fact works, and
Well,
then
tell us that. What are some
what does that
examples?
look like?
Tell us some example. What are some of your favorite examples of practical things that companies have done that have worked? You mentioned over 1,000. We ain't got time for that to do a whole series of that one. What are your some of favorite examples of things that our listeners can go away and do? Practical things.
Ironically, delightfully, the best ones tend to be no cost. So thanking them when they do a good job, what could be simpler than to tell someone, really appreciate what you did. That was great, and why. And here's why it was so meaningful. So providing a context that ties it to our team goals, or the core values of the company, or wow, 92% of employees say that they like to be asked for their ideas and suggestions. How hard is that? And if they have a good idea, give them permission to pursue it. Give them autonomy and authority to. That's a great idea. Don't say, "Oh, we tried that 2 years ago. It'll never work," and cut them off at the knees before they even start. But take that energy. Who's gonna have more energy for the idea than someone that came up with it to begin with?
Yeah, and they won't come back again, right? And they won't come back again if you shut them down.
If you send them a message, "Oh yeah, that's not going to work." Oh, okay, I won't suggest any more ideas to you. 89% of employees say that they like to be involved in decision making. Another kind of no-brainer. Well, talk to the people that can be most affected by the decision, especially if you want to convince them to do it. It's going to be easier to get their input on the front end instead of after you decided and trying to force it on them. and yet that doesn't seem to be done that as much as it should be. Managers, well, I'm the person in charge. I'm who paid to make the decisions. Well, great. No one's trying to take that away from you. Just it'll be a better decision if you ask people for their input. Kind of common sense, and so do that. Even if you start by saying, "Hey, I know, I've got to make the final decision, but I know it'd be a better decision if I get your input, because you're closer to the job and the task and the customer, or whatever." And so I want, what do you think? What do you think we should do? And wow, you're showing trust, you're showing respect, you're showing, you're elevating the person before they've even said anything, and then they're going to take it more seriously and give you better input. Or what could be easier than a big one is when someone makes a mistake. Again, our human nature is you screwed up, and maybe yell at them, or and what's that going to get you? You know, the chances are they already know they made a mistake. Now you're going to pile on and you can embarrass them in front of their peers. That's going to work like a charm. And so maybe maybe for a lot of managers, it's a different behavior. And again, it's letting go a little bit to say, I'm not sure I would have made that same mistake. I'm not sure I would have done it the same way, but what did you learn from that? That could be the best training you've had all year. I'm glad you made that mistake. In fact, I like to talk about with the whole team because because I think we all can learn from that, and actually thanking them for making the mistake. That's a great thing that you learned.
Novartis, the pharma company Novartis, every year they have an award for the biggest mistake. So
yes,
when they do their ceremony, they have obviously other ones, but one that they added because one of their core values is creating a culture of curiosity. So in order to do that, they have one of the small things they do is have an award every year for the biggest mistake. And they celebrate that that person tried to go and solve and tackle such a big challenge. And yes, they didn't quite succeed, but it was the journey, the passion, the learnings along the way that they want to celebrate.
3M does the same thing because they know from innovation that on average 60% of the things you try are not going to work. So you've got to encourage people and strongly encourage them to try things that are more difficult and likely not to succeed. And so you can't penalize it when it doesn't succeed. You gotta honor the effort, because that's what will get us to the right answer. So yes, it's maybe after people do it, it looks easier. Usually
you don't see the mistakes, right? A lot of my friends ask me about entrepreneurship and about making money, and they complain they don't have any money. And I say, I literally had a conversation 2 days ago with someone. And I said, how many ways have you tried to make money? They're like, what do you mean? I make money this one way. I was like, okay, how many other ways have you tried to make money? And they're like, none.
Wow.
So how can then you say that you want to make more money if you've only ever tried making money one way? And you can see the confusion. And it's similar with our business here. We've launched products that we've made no money on, or made a loss on, or it's failed. But not, and that's just part of the process.
Diamonds in the rough. Yes.
Like, how often do people sit down with their friends and family and think, let's sit down today and think about more ways we can make money? Like, if that's a challenge for you, I'm just using that as an example.
That's a very, in the times we're in, I think for most people that'd be a very useful skill to focus on. And I personally, for my personal philosophy on life is I always have 3 or 4 irons in the fire, and to have 2 or 3 work, or 4 or 5 strategies, and it's not always the one that you like to think common sense would work, but sometimes it's the one that it's not that one. It's another one that worked better. So we all have to be good at pivoting, in our lives, and companies need to do that as well.
100%.
Because of the drastic change in circumstances that we've seen just in the last couple of years, and that change is going to continue. So.
What about the managers in this? Because when you was doing all of those interviews, did most companies provide training to those leaders on how to manage their teams and their reward and recognition, or was it just up to them and they had no real guidance of how they're doing?
The big challenge on a lot of my topics is because they sound like common sense. The assumptions made, well, we must be doing it because that's so obvious. And it's like, well, Voltaire in 1640 said, common sense is not common. And that hasn't changed. And so you've got to check that and say, well, yes, I know it sounds like a simple solution, but if your leaders aren't doing it, then you're not going to get the
Can you develop that as a muscle? Is common sense a muscle? Because I feel like I've got friends of mine that I'd say intellectually are very, A stars and all the degrees you can think of, but they have no common sense. And and I've got other friends who academically haven't performed as well, but they have this real innate common sense. And it always confused me. Is it a muscle? Is common sense a muscle you can develop?
I think it is, and I know that, or I've my brother went to Harvard Business School. I know other people there, and I've had them tell me that really basically they learn common sense, that they're, because you just saw time after time. Here's how they worked it through, and here's how they did it. And well, okay, then that's the approach, and so they're really at the Harvard Business School. They're teaching common sense. I would.
Through repetition, through failure, through experience comes common sense.
Yeah, and again, the case study method. Here's we can examine what didn't work as easily as what did work. Again, going back to the power of mistakes. Bill Gates, former chairman of Microsoft, who once said, "You can tell a lot about the long-term viability of any organization simply by looking at how they handle mistakes." Because if you celebrate the efforts, as we were saying, and you're going to get more likely to get there sooner with a better answer than if you are saying we got to do it this certain way and lock in on a process that may or may
Isn't
not
it crazy how companies, they're so they'll create that strategy, and no matter what's happening around them within the market or whether it's working or not, they still stay on course. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And I've seen it so many times and spoken to HR executives that have been like, Chris, we're still going on this 5-year plan, even though the world's completely changed around us or in a different place, but they're just like, we're going to stick to it.
So what's the answer to that? How do you hold them accountable, or how it's in part of Marshall's group, blanking on his name, but the gentleman that was CEO for Ford and before that for Boeing.
Is that Alan Mulally or made it?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, exactly. Sorry. Yeah. And he did the book of the experience at Ford, and he is amazing because he came in not knowing the industry and just simply knowing people and knowing processes, and he'd have people report out. So you have all his execs together in a meeting and have them each report out, and they did. And he goes, that's funny because it sounds like everyone's doing an incredible job, yet we lost $3 billion last year.
That's a perfect example of what I just said, right? Everyone's like, we're all doing a great job, but we're all going in
exactly, because people are myopic and they're worried about themselves and not the greater good, so they're quick to look over.
It takes a strong personality and CEO to come into that, right, and completely steer that ship in a different direction.
And what he did, he said, we're gonna meet again next week, and I want people to be honest about things that aren't going as any problems you have, and they met again, and wouldn't you know, someone said, well, we had a problem in the manufacturing in this one plant, and he stood up and he applauded him, the guy, and that kind of broke the ice.
He's like, that employee was like, oh, thank God, I'm not getting fired. He's listening.
Yeah, exactly. But that changed the culture for their meetings, and then that changed the culture. He also did a cool thing that he had each person to the executive meetings invite someone else of their choosing. So it kind of, we're not having secret meetings here. We're running the company that a lot of people's lives are depending on.
Together.
So we're going to be open in how we approach this. And so it was through really some simple steps that led them in a new direction. The whole way he was challenged. Well, that's not the way we do it. And in fact, when he first came in to Ford and he went from the airport, they drove him to an auditorium. Auditorium was full of reporters. It's an introduction to the job. Okay, tell us what you're going to do. And like the first question he got was like, well, you're from a completely different industry. What makes you think you can handle what we need at Ford Motor Company? Been around for 120 years, whatever. He said, well, I'm coming from an industry Boeing, where the plane has 10,000 moving parts and it's got to work. The average car has 4,000. I think I got this. Like, end of questions. Okay. So
Yeah.
he was just open and I think that oblivious to fear. I don't know, but he's a very nice person and very simple approaches that
But to
got
our
him a
point of
different.
this episode, this is what it really means to be employee centric and to create the employee centric culture, right? Is by including them in the process. If you don't do that, you've already failed.
And even starting, and again, my head spins because so many companies, like, New York finance companies, you got to come back to the office. Pandemic's over. And there's the CEO of JP Morgan. If you can go out to dinner in New York City, you can come to the office.
Did he say that?
Everyone to be back.
Did he say? Oh God! And that's the thing, though. Those leaders at the top of companies like that have a distorted lens, because they are in the one percenters. Their lifestyle, their way of working, their bills that they have to pay, their family life. In many, like, how can you relate to every employee all the way down? They're looking at it through, I think, a distorted lens. And not understanding the picture.
I think it's the wanting to snap back to normal of pre-pandemic and not realizing that maybe some things have changed for good. Mm-hmm. And now if you pay people enough, they're going to do whatever you tell them to do, which is maybe part of the situation as well. So, but to me, it's very short-sighted, because we know that most of the employees that worked from home during the pandemic, 65% want to continue to do so. And so to say, well, you have to come back to the office, and then if you press on that, well, why is that? Well, we've got this big office building that we're paying for. Well, that's not a reason.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, maybe you should sublease. Well, someone's in charge of making sure people get back in the office, so they're harping on people, and a lot of times that falls to HR. I know HR people that say that, my boss is saying, hold the meeting, in person, make everyone come in, and they're doing. They'll have 400 people online and 20 will show up in person. And it's like, no, we've got to force them to come in. Do we? Why? Wow, because that person's fears that they're not doing their job unless they can make that happen. We got to justify the lease that we've got or the building that we bought. It's like, well, think outside the box. Maybe you should sell the building. Maybe you should, I work with some companies that are 100% virtual, and I haven't seen where they have missed a beat. So when they have meetings, they'll have people pre-record their presentation and then ask everyone to view the presentations on their own time. And then when we get together, they'll do a couple-minute review and take questions. Very efficient meeting, and now you can have a meeting in 20 minutes instead of an hour and a half.
And you also get the flexibility to everyone else on their own time, right? Of how they want to consume the content.
Exactly.
Do you think that HR, like in many companies now, most companies, we talk about employee recognition, employee experience, culture, that lives with HR. Do you think that should be owned by HR, those things?
Wow. I guess I really don't, because HR has a reputation of being a staff, a support position, and they haven't been, in most instances, they are not part of leading the charge. I know we were talking about that earlier, that there's been this thing on, well, how do you get to the table and be a part of, and for most HR people, I fear that's not their forte. Unfortunately, and the company is driven by line management, and support staff does support, and they're handed their budget, and so it's the whole journey. And I think you're in a key position, because you're dealing with highly successful HR people, and you can see those that have been successful, what they've done. So I think you've got a keen insight for how you can let the secrets out for other HR people.
I think it's a bit of a skewed perspective, right? Because we are chatting with HR leaders from some of the world's leading global brands, right? But for the very many, but 99% of companies out there, it isn't the case. Perhaps
you could you could formulate, maybe in the book you can formulate what that secret looks like. And
The
again,
secret
my
sauce.
guess is it'll be very straightforward, my guess. And somehow, why is it happening in those environments,
Yeah.
and not others? Is it the personality of the HR person? Is it the structure of the company? Is it embedded into the strategic objectives? I mean, without a doubt, I I remember once talking with the CEO for Kelly Services, and he said, eh, the war for talent is over. Talent won, and we need to wrap around that, and we're definitely in that right now, where we need to respect and take the expectations of the talent that we need to thrive and survive, seriously, to give them what they want. And it's not just money, that might be on the table, but it's respect, and it's permission, and it's helping us lead the charge.
Hmm.
And I don't know, yeah, I think it's still, it still has, we haven't made that turn, I think, in
No,
the HR,
I think
in the
the
HR
last 2 years
profession.
helped a little bit. I mean, I think, oh, actually, massively. I think the last 2 years has pushed us sort of 5 years ahead, and a lot of those things. When I started doing
Yeah.
this 15 years ago, you wasn't talking about employee experience. You definitely wasn't talking about hybrid work. You definitely wasn't talking about well-being, leading with empathy. A lot of the things that we're talking about now that have been pushed to the forefront, we've come a long, long way. We've definitely got a lot of work to do,
Yes.
as well. But I do think we've made leaps and bounds.
And
Um,
maybe that's not for every industry too. Maybe it's like, well, okay, well-being, you're going to have to be in a more enlightened industry that respects that, if that's one of your things that you want.
mhm.
Uh, and there's a lot of, in fact, we're seeing this just on hybrid. A lot of companies that have not embraced it, is they are waiting for the pandemic to be over, and now people will be back in the office, and they're not a high-tech company. They're not, you know,
But they
we've
will
got
lose
a
talent, though, right?
we've
Like you
got a
said,
manufacturing plant, and this is where the work happens. I mean, Elon Musk, he just this week
is it
announced,
10%, right?
yeah,
10% of
yeah,
all
yeah,
Tesla
100
employees have been let go, or something like
100%
that.
back at work. Because if we're gonna, the goals we have are not gonna be, we're not gonna achieve them by you phoning in. You gotta show up and show us that you're committed. So your sense of commitment is from you actually being there.
Hmm.
Well, okay, it's his company, he can make that claim.
He can do it.
And
We'll see what happens there. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because he also
he's
just
got
let go of a lot of employees as well. So we're
yeah,
gonna.
yeah. Well, he kind of cut to the chase. If you're not willing to do that, then you need to get a different job. I mean, I applaud him being upfront about, and he certainly has, is doing some things right to have the success that he has. So, um, but you kind of wonder, is that, and actually he sued state of California for forcing him to close operations during the
I
pandemic.
remember.
So
Yeah,
yeah, so maybe that's the part of being the visionary, to look beyond
you can't
the
always be the
current
good guy as
trends.
well. Listen, before I let you go, Bob, what's sort of the core message that you want to leave with our audience? You've done so much research in this space. What are some things that what advice would you give to our listeners before
I'd come
before I let
back
you
to
go?
the simplest advice: ask, listen, take what you hear seriously, do the first thing, put you on a different path. Again, I guess maybe that's why common sense
It's
isn't
not common
common practice,
sense.
because it feels like a lot of times you're up against a tidal wave of saying, yeah, we've got pressures and this, and but if you can hold things at bay and just say, let's just ask employees what they need to do a better job, and then try to give them that, and it may relate financially. Chances are it'll relate more today to flexibility, and um, finding, employing the whole person, not having them check their thinking at the door, but we want your best thinking. So I think that's the key to tapping into what employees have to offer, is to be sincere about wanting that,
Hmm.
and not be predisposed to saying, well, this is within these boundaries, this is what we can and cannot support. Especially as some of those are historical, history's being rewritten, so you need to pivot with it.
Definitely. And then very last question, where can people connect with you, Bob? If they want to reach out, say hello, follow you, grab books, where's the best place?
I've got the website, www.drbobnelson.com, and I do, besides the books you mentioned, I do consulting and speaking, and meet people wherever they're at, to try to help them move forward to being more the organization that values everyone's input and takes that seriously.
Amazing. Well, look, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it as always, and thanks for getting up so early.
I appreciate what you do, Chris. You're doing good things, and expect more of the same from you going
Thank
forward.
you. And I promise that one day I'll write a book. I'll call you, and you can help me out.
I will put you on the straight and narrow to make that happen.
Fantastic.
I guarantee it.
Fantastic. Well, for everyone listening, as always, all of the links that we've mentioned are in the comments below. So make sure you click that. Go on, and also go and follow Bob over on LinkedIn and connect with him there as well, and check out his website. Also, like, comment, share, hit the subscribe button if you're on YouTube. And if you're on your podcast platform, hit follow there so you never miss an episode. Apart from that, enjoy the rest of your day, Bob, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Chris, love it. Thank you so much. Same to you.